The sky was pale with dawn, the kind of soft light that carries a quiet promise. But in the vast field surrounded by old wooden fences and patches of tall grass, that promise seemed forgotten. The wind brushed gently against the landscape, whispering, through brittle weeds and rustling dry leaves that scattered like memories too painful to hold on to. And in the middle of that field, curled up beside a cracked plastic food bowl and a damp, empty water dish, lay a dog. He wasn't just any dog. He was old, his fur grayed, his body frail, his joints stiff from years of faithful service and aging bones. A faded red collar clung loosely to his neck, its tag scratched beyond recognition. But what stood out most wasn't his tired body, or the way his ribs peeked faintly through his thinning coat. It was the hat. A party hat, sky blue with tiny, yellow stars, perched crookedly between his worn, alert ears. The elastic string holding it in place had tangled in his fur, but he didn't seem to mind. It had been put there with love once. That was what he held on to. His name was Buddy, a name he hadn't heard in days, maybe weeks. Time was slippery now. But he remembered. He remembered the day he was brought to this field, tail wagging, heart pounding with excitement. His humans had taken him on drives before. They'd called it an adventure, always ending with toys or treats or warm cuddles on the couch. So when the car door opened and he was gently guided out, his tail had wagged wildly. He thought this was another surprise. And when the car pulled away, he didn't panic. Not at first. He waited. Hours turned to days. The food left behind was gone quickly. The water drank even faster. The blanket they laid down had grown damp from mourning, too. Still he waited, believing that surely this was part of something special. After all, they'd said, "Happy birthday, buddy," just before they drove away. They had kissed his forehead, adjusted the little hat, and told him they loved him. But love doesn't leave you alone in a field. Not like this. Now each morning, Buddy rose slowly, wincing as he stood, and limped to the edge of the road, eyes scanning for the familiar rumble of the old pickup truck. His ears would twitch at the sound of passing cars, but they never stopped, just kicked up dust and disappeared again. Every time the wind shifted, he perked up, tail lifting hopefully as if scenting something, someone he knew. But it was always nothing. And still, he wore the hat. It had slipped sideways, dirtied by time and weather, but he kept it on. Because he was still waiting. Because he believed. Children passed sometimes, riding bicycles far off the trail. A few pointed. One had even tried to approach, but their mother tugged them back, muttering something about not going near stray dogs. Stray. That word hadn't been part of Buddy's identity before. He was family, a protector, a friend, a birthday boy. Until he wasn't. One night the sky cracked open with thunder. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking the already chilled ground. Buddy trembled beneath a crooked wooden pallet he had crawled under for shelter, his hat drooping with water. He licked the empty bowl once, as if it might somehow magically fill again. His body was tired, cold settled into his bones like regret. But his eyes, despite the storm and the hunger, still watched the road, still waited, and somewhere deep in the shadows of his memory, he heard a child's laugh. He remembered the warmth of blankets, the way his boy used to wrap his arms around his neck and say, "Best dog ever, buddy, you're my best friend." He remembered birthday songs sung off-key, the peanut butter biscuits they gave him once a year, and the sound of wrapping paper tearing. He didn't understand what had changed. He only knew that he hadn't. He was still the same Buddy, still loyal, still waiting. But the days were growing colder, and each morning it was harder to stand. His back legs buckled more often now, and the skin beneath his fur had become irritated from lying in wet grass. The party hat now hung by a thread, half torn, its color barely visible beneath mud stains. Yet it stayed, because it was the last thing he had. One afternoon, a rusted blue truck slowed at the edge of the road. Buddy lifted his head, ears straining, tail twitching. He forced himself up, every joint screaming in protest. Was it them? Was this the moment? The truck didn't stop. Dust stung his eyes as it roared past. He stood for a while anyway, just in case it turned around. It didn't. He collapsed onto his side, panting softly, heart aching more than his bones. Still, he wore the hat. Because deep inside the weathered shell of the dog everyone else had forgotten, there remained a flicker of belief, of loyalty, of love that didn't fade with time or pain or abandonment. Buddy had once been a hero to his family, a protector of dreams and chaser of sticks. And even now, though the world had grown silent around him, he believed in them. Believed they'd come back, and he would keep believing, as long as he had breath in his lungs and that crooked hat on his head. The sun crept higher over the field, casting long shadows across the land where Buddy lay, curled into the earth like he was trying to disappear into it. He hadn't moved much in 2 days. The stiffness in his back legs had worsened, and the cool nights no longer let him rest. They ached deep into his bones. But he kept his head up, always watching the road. That morning, the wind carried something different. It wasn't the scent of his family, not the boy who used to press his face into Buddy's fur, nor the woman who hummed while pouring kibble into his bowl. No, this scent was new, strange, yet gentle. It didn't make his ears go back or his tail tuck under like some of the others had. It started with footsteps crunching through the tall grass. They were slow, tentative, not like the hurried joggers or kids who would scream and laugh before quickly biking away. These steps moved with purpose, then paused as if unsure whether to go forward. Buddy tried to raise his head, but it dropped again. His body was sore, weak from hunger and the cold creeping into every joint. The party hat was now torn on one side, barely clinging to the patchy fur between his ears. Then the voice came, soft, hesitant, kind. "Hey there, old boy." Buddy didn't move at first. He blinked slowly and turned his face toward the sound. A woman, maybe in her mid-30s, was crouching just a few feet away. She didn't look like the others. There was no fear in her eyes, no quick steps away. She had warm eyes full of curiosity and concern. In her hand she held something, half a sandwich in a napkin. I saw you from the road. You've been out here a while, haven't you?" Her voice cracked. "Oh no. Are you wearing a party hat?" She said it like her heart broke just noticing it, like that detail pierced deeper than the rest. Buddy tried to wag his tail. Just once. A faint flutter of hope. It barely moved. She stepped closer, kneeling into the grass and placing the sandwich gently on the ground in front of him. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I'm Lily." The name meant nothing to Buddy, but her tone did. It reminded him of the way the boy used to whisper when he had a bad dream. Kind, steady. He sniffed the air, then slowly, trembling, lifted his head toward the sandwich. His mouth was dry and his body screamed with effort, but he nudged the food closer and took a cautious bite. It wasn't dog food. It was better. Real meat, bread, maybe a little cheese. It made him groan softly with gratitude. Lily sat with her knees drawn up, watching him like someone who didn't want to scare off a wild animal. Her eyes never left the party hat. "It's your birthday, isn't it?" she whispered. "And they just left you here?" She shook her head, blinking back tears. "Who could do that to you?" Buddy didn't know the words, but he felt the emotion. He heard the pain in her voice. Pain not just for him, but for what kind of person it takes to abandon something so loyal, so loving, so patient. After he finished the sandwich, he lay his head back down, sighing. His tail thumped, once, then again. Lily reached out very slowly and placed her fingers on his paw. It was cold, thinner than it should be. She could feel the brittle bones beneath the skin. "You've been waiting out here, haven't you?" she murmured, still hoping they'd come back. The wind picked up again, catching the loose corner of the party hat. Buddy didn't flinch. He just looked at her with tired eyes that had seen too much silence. She pulled out her phone and took a photo, not for social media or any platform, just for herself. Just to remember this moment. "You deserve better," she whispered, and in her mind, a quiet battle began. She already had 2 dogs at home, a small apartment. Her job at the bookstore barely paid the bills. She wasn't looking to adopt. But something about this dog, this broken, beautiful soul with a hat still perched on his head like a badge of hope, had taken hold of her heart and wouldn't let go. "You know what?" she said softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You waited long enough. It's time someone waited for you." She stood, gently scooping up the empty food wrapper. "I'll be back, buddy. I swear. I'll bring a crate and a blanket and maybe even another sandwich. Just stay here. Please don't give up yet." He watched her go, his ears lifting just slightly as she looked back 3 times before disappearing down the road. Her scent lingered in the grass, blending with the fading hope that had once made him stand up each day. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel invisible. He rested easier that night. The wind still howled. The stars were still distant and cold. But his heart held on to something more than memories now. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't waiting alone anymore. And though the party hat slipped off sometime before morning, Buddy didn't notice. He was dreaming of warmth, of quiet hands, of a name spoken with love. Tomorrow she would return, and his story, left untold for too long, might finally begin again. Morning light crawled across the field like a golden whisper, brushing against the worn, frost-speckled fur of the old K9 German Shepherd. Buddy stirred, blinking slowly. The stiffness in his joints matched only by the quiet ache in his soul. Yet something had changed. Something faint, but real. The memory of the woman, Lily, was still vivid in his weary mind. Her voice had echoed in his dreams, not like a memory, but like a promise. A warm hand, soft eyes, and the scent of kindness. It had stirred something that had nearly gone silent in him, and just as the wind picked up and he curled tighter against the cold earth, he heard it. Footsteps, not hurried, not careless, intentional. Light, but sure. He didn't lift his head right, away. He didn't want to hope too soon, but the soft thump of something being placed on the ground next to him made his ears twitch. "Hey, buddy," Lily whispered, kneeling beside him again, this time with more than a sandwich. She had brought a large blanket, worn but clean, wrapped around something soft, a pillow maybe, or a folded bed. And next to that, a crate with the door propped open and lined with towels. A gentle invitation, not a trap. She remembered what a rescue should feel like. Choice, not force. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," she said, placing the sandwich down gently again along with a plastic bowl of water. "I barely slept, I had to come back." Buddy lifted his head. It took everything he had, but he did it. Then he tried to stand. His hind legs trembled violently beneath him, but with great effort he moved, not toward the sandwich first, toward her. Lily gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my gosh, you remember me." He nuzzled her fingers weakly, his eyes clouded with age but brightened with something deeper. Connection. Recognition. She didn't touch the hat this time. It had fallen off sometime in the night, now damp and wrinkled in the grass. But she noticed it and gently set it aside, as if it were sacred. "You wore that hat like you were still waiting for someone to throw you a party," she whispered. "You still believed someone cared enough." Her voice cracked and she looked away to steady herself. "Well, I do." She unwrapped the blanket and laid it out beside him, guiding him onto it with careful hands. He didn't resist. For the first time in what must have felt like ages, someone was trying to comfort him without strings or fear. The moment his body sank into the softness of the blanket, his eyes fluttered. He exhaled heavily, his whole body relaxing. Lily reached down and stroked the fur between his ears. "I made a few calls this morning," she said. "There's a vet clinic in town that's open today. They said they'd take a look at you. No charge. Said they couldn't turn away a birthday boy." She tried to smile through the tears that had begun to slide freely down her cheeks. "I didn't tell them you're probably 15, that you've got arthritis and maybe worse. But they didn't ask either. They just said bring him in." He leaned into her touch, his tail giving the faintest thump against the blanket. It was barely audible, but it was there. She stayed with him for over an hour, letting him eat slowly, sip the water, and then just rest while she sat beside him and whispered stories. About her 2 dogs that passed years ago. About her childhood best friend, a mutt named Rudy. About her father who had once brought home a limping stray and fixed up his leg with duct tape and a sock until the vet could take a look. Buddy didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, the rhythm, the love. It was the kind of presence dogs knew by heart. Eventually, she took a deep breath and opened the crate door wider. "Okay, buddy, I don't know if this is asking too much, but would you come with me?" He looked at the crate, hesitated, then looked back at her. She didn't push. She didn't tug his collar. He didn't have one. She just waited, and after a long, uncertain moment, he stepped forward, one paw, then the other, each one shaking but determined. He entered the crate and turned around once before lying down with a heavy sigh. It wasn't fear. It was surrender. The peaceful kind. The maybe I'm safe now kind. Lily swallowed the lump in her throat. "You're coming home, birthday boy." As she gently lifted the crate into the back of her car and secured it with blankets to cushion the ride, she glanced back at the field. The wind was blowing the party hat across the grass, tumbling it end over end like a lost memory. She stopped, picked it up, folded it gently. This mattered, not because it was a hat, but because it was proof of his patience, his loyalty, his unwavering belief that someone, anyone, would care enough to notice. She placed it on the passenger seat. They drove in silence, save for the occasional sigh from the crate behind her. Buddy's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion finally winning. But he wasn't alone now. Not anymore. The road ahead was uncertain. He was an old dog, with more years behind him than ahead. But for the first time in a long, long time, his story had shifted, from forgotten to found, from abandoned to adored, from the cold grass to the warmth of a car seat with someone who whispered his name like it was sacred. His name, Lily had decided. "You don't have to be Buddy anymore," she said softly to the rearview mirror. "You deserve something stronger, braver," she smiled to herself. "How about Chance?" In the crate, his tail thumped once. A new chapter had begun, and for the old dog once left in a field with nothing but a birthday hat and fading hope, it would be the one he deserved all along. The storm had passed, but its impact lingered, not in the skies above, but in the heart of the little puppy that now lay curled in a fleece-lined blanket beside Maya's fireplace. His thin body, still recovering from starvation and exposure, twitched occasionally in restless sleep. The fire crackled softly, casting a warm glow on the walls of the cabin, and Maya sat on the floor nearby, her eyes never leaving him. She had named him Rusty, not because of the color of his fur, though it was a coppery hue, but because he reminded her of something neglected, weathered by time and hardship, yet still capable of shining if given a chance. The vet's words from earlier that day still echoed in her mind. He's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and clearly traumatized. But he's young, and his body's strong. With love and care, he can pull through. That glimmer of hope had fueled her through the long night, through the tears she hadn't meant to cry, and the gentle whispers she'd spoken into the silent room just to let him know he wasn't alone anymore. Rusty stirred, letting out a soft whimper, and Maya crawled closer, gently placing a hand on his side. His eyes fluttered open, wide and frightened, but then they locked with hers, and for a moment, the fear flickered, just slightly. She didn't try to pet him. She'd learned, quickly, that sudden movements only made him flinch. Instead, she simply let him feel her presence, calm and steady. A few seconds later, he relaxed against the blanket again. It was progress. Tiny, but real. Over the next few days, Maya's life adjusted to revolve around Rusty's recovery. Her freelance graphic design work took a backseat as she focused on coaxing him into a routine. Regular meals, gentle baths, short walks in the yard when he felt brave enough. He had a cozy dog bed beside her own, but often ended up curling against the wall or beneath furniture, as though still unsure whether this new life was real or a cruel trick. Every small step forward was accompanied by moments of regression. The sound of a dropped spoon would send him scrambling. Loud knocks at the door made him tremble. Maya never raised her voice, never forced him to engage. Instead, she filled their world with calm, soft instrumental music during the day, soothing stories at night, and lots of quiet moments where she simply sat near him, showing him with her stillness that she was not a threat. One morning, after nearly a week, Rusty did something Maya hadn't expected so soon. He approached her voluntarily. She was sitting on the porch with a bowl of oatmeal when she heard the light patting of his paws. Turning slowly, she saw him standing just a foot away, eyes cautious but curious. Her heart thudded. She didn't move. Rusty took one tentative step forward and sniffed her leg, then sat down beside her, his body tense but grounded. Maya bit her lip to keep from crying. Instead, she reached down slowly and placed a piece of apple on the porch between them. Rusty sniffed it, looked up at her, and then gently took it into his mouth. It was the first moment of real trust. After that morning, things began to change more noticeably. Rusty started to explore the house, sniffing doorways, cautiously pawing at blankets. He followed Maya from room to room, not closely but always within sight. When she spoke to him, his ears would twitch, and sometimes his tail would make the slightest movement, as if learning again how to wag. He still had nightmares, and he still flinched at quick gestures, but the fear no longer paralyzed him. He was adapting, slowly, beautifully. Maya knew that healing wasn't just about the body. It was about helping Rusty believe he was safe, that he belonged. So she began taking him on short car rides, just a few minutes down the road and back. The first time he drooled and shook in the back seat, pressing himself against the door. But by the fourth or fifth trip, he sat up a little straighter, ears perked with interest. One day they parked at the forest trail entrance, not the same one where she had found him, but a peaceful nearby path filled with sunlight and birdsong. They didn't go far, just a few steps, but Rusty sniffed a leaf, chased a butterfly for 2 seconds, and then looked back at her with what could only be described as wonder. The biggest breakthrough came during a quiet afternoon when Maya sat on the floor sorting laundry. Rusty approached slowly and without prompting lay down with his head resting on her knee. Maya froze. The trust implicit in that gesture, the vulnerability it took for him to choose closeness, it overwhelmed her. She stroked his head lightly, feeling his warmth, his steady breath, and whispered, "You're safe now, Rusty. No more trees, no more ropes, no more being alone." As Rusty's strength returned, his playful side began to emerge. Maya brought him toys, stuffed animals, squeaky balls, even a plush fox that quickly became his favorite. He would carry it around gently, placing it beside him when he slept, sometimes nudging it toward Maya as if offering her a piece of his heart. One rainy morning, she caught him play-bowing at the edge of the living room, tail wagging, fox in mouth. She laughed for the first time in weeks and joined him on the floor. That day they played until the clouds cleared. The more time they spent together, the more Maya noticed how deeply they needed each other. She had always loved animals, always volunteered at shelters, but Rusty was different. There was something about his eyes, the way he watched her with a mix of awe and caution, that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. His scars mirrored her own, not physical ones, but the kind left behind by abandonment and betrayal. They were kindred spirits, bound not just by a chance meeting but by shared survival. One evening, Maya sat on the porch steps with Rusty beside her, both watching the sun sink behind the trees. He leaned his body against her leg, his breathing calm and even. The stars began to twinkle above them, and she felt a peace settle into her bones. She looked down at Rusty and whispered, "I don't know why you were left there, but I'm so glad I found you." Rusty didn't respond in words, of course, but he looked up at her, eyes soft and full of understanding, and rested his head in her lap. For Maya, it was answer enough. Sunlight streamed through the tall pine trees, painting golden patterns on the soft forest floor, as Maya slowly walked beside the now healthy puppy, who pranced with uncontainable joy. His fur glistened like burnished copper, and the once haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by something radiant: hope. They had returned to the very forest where she had found him tied to the tree, not as a place of darkness, but as a symbol of how far he had come. Every step they took was a quiet celebration, a testament to survival, to healing, and to the undeniable bond that had formed between them. Maya knelt down by the same tree, placing a small wooden sign in the earth at its base. It read, "Here is where hope began. Rusty's tree. May no soul ever be forgotten." Her fingers brushed over the engraved letters, and for a moment the tears returned. But they were no longer tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of release. Rusty, the name she had chosen for the puppy, nuzzled her shoulder and sat beside her, as if understanding the weight of the moment. This tree, once a symbol of abandonment, now stood for redemption. In the weeks since the rescue, Rusty had blossomed. From the skeletal, shivering pup tied to a tree, he had grown into a strong, spirited dog with a deep, soulful bark and an infectious playfulness. Maya had poured every ounce of her heart into his recovery. He had eaten with ferocity at first, like he feared each meal might be his last. But eventually the panic in his eyes eased. He had started to trust, to feel safe. At home, Maya's cozy cottage had slowly become his haven. He would curl up beside her on the couch while she worked, on her laptop, his head resting on her thigh, sighing contentedly. At night he would sleep by her bed, one paw always resting on the edge of her blanket as if to make sure she was still there. For Maya, waking up to his big brown eyes and wagging tail had brought a kind of peace she didn't know she needed. But Rusty's healing wasn't just physical. Maya had taken him to a local dog behaviorist, an older woman named Carol, who had worked with rescue animals for over 30 years. Carol had been gentle, patient, and wise. She'd taught Maya how to rebuild Rusty's sense of safety, how to approach his trauma not with pity, but with gentle consistency and love. Under Carol's guidance, Maya learned to speak Rusty's language, to understand when he needed space, when he needed comfort, and when he was ready to play. Day by day, Rusty grew more confident, his tail held higher, his eyes brighter. One particularly emotional breakthrough had come on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Thunder had rolled over the hills, and Rusty had begun trembling, hiding beneath the kitchen table. Maya had slowly laid down on the floor beside him, not saying a word, just being there. After several minutes, he had inched forward and rested his head on her chest. That was the moment she knew. He had chosen her, not just as his rescuer, but as his person. That night he had crawled into bed with her for the first time and slept through the storm. Word of Rusty's rescue had spread around the small town. Maya's post on social media, detailing the harrowing discovery and the journey of healing, had gone viral. Messages poured in from strangers moved to tears by Rusty's resilience. Offers to adopt him came from across the country. But Maya didn't need time to think. She knew she could never let him go. He was family now. And somehow it felt like he had been waiting for her all along. Local children would now stop by just to say hi to Rusty. The shy ones would sit cross-legged on the lawn, waiting for him to come to them. Rusty, ever gentle, would nuzzle into their laps or lick their hands, his eyes soft and kind. One child, a boy named Leo who rarely spoke, had whispered his first words to Rusty, "Good boy." It brought Maya to tears. Rusty was healing others too. Maya also began volunteering, At the animal shelter every weekend, Rusty would accompany her, greeting the other rescue animals with gentle enthusiasm. He became something of a mascot, a beacon of what was possible. Dogs who had shut down would sometimes perk up in his presence. Maya and the shelter staff began organizing a monthly event called Hope Walks, where people could walk with rescue dogs in the forest. Rusty led every one of them, proudly trotting ahead with his tail wagging and tongue flopping, as if showing others, "This is where we begin again." One morning, as Maya sipped her coffee on the front porch and Rusty chased a butterfly through the flowers, an elderly man walked up the path. He was stooped with age and had watery blue eyes. He introduced himself as Daniel. "I think I know that dog," he said quietly, pointing to Rusty. Maya's heart seized. Daniel explained that his estranged grandson had once owned a puppy who looked just like Rusty. The boy had struggled with drugs and had disappeared months ago. Maya gently asked a few questions, and they pieced together the truth. Rusty had likely been the boy's dog. When the boy's addiction worsened, he had tied Rusty to the tree in a moment of desperation, not cruelty, perhaps thinking someone would find him. Daniel sat with Rusty, tears trickling down his cheeks as he stroked the dog's fur. "I'm so sorry, boy," he whispered. Rusty licked his hand and leaned against him. There was no anger, no fear, only forgiveness. Maya invited Daniel to visit any time. From that day on, Daniel became part of their lives too, and often brought Rusty homemade treats wrapped in paper towels. On the anniversary of Rusty's rescue, Maya invited all their new friends, Carol, the shelter staff, the children, and Daniel, for a celebration in the forest clearing near the tree. A picnic was laid out on blankets and a banner fluttered in the wind. From Forgotten to Forever, Rusty's Day. Children painted paw prints on canvas, dogs chased frisbees, and laughter echoed through the woods. Rusty wore a bandana around his neck that read, "Rescued, Loved, Home." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Maya sat with Rusty in her lap. She looked into his eyes, still sometimes amazed he was real, that he had survived, and that she had been lucky enough to find him. She kissed the top of his head and whispered, "You were never just a rescue, Rusty. You rescued me, too." The wind rustled the leaves, and the tree behind them stood tall, no longer a monument to abandonment but a symbol of love reclaimed. And there, in the golden glow of dusk, with laughter around them and peace in their hearts, Rusty closed his eyes and sighed, finally home.